I'm John Linkove, and this is the review of the Lucid Gravity. The Gravity is a wagon, SUV, minivan type thing from the all-electric automaker, and it's their second model coming a few years after the first car, the Lucid Air sedan. The Gravity is a showpiece for Lucid's strengths, such as long range, a smooth electric powertrain, very fast acceleration, clever packaging, luxury appointments, and a roomy interior. Unfortunately, it's also a showpiece for all the ills that we have seen with recently introduced electric vehicles from startup manufacturers, such as over-reliance on screen, form over function design, software bugs galore from when it arrived, and reinventing the wheel, both literally and figuratively. I'm going to go into the details of the car and what we found in our drives. But first, this is the model that we bought. There's only one trim available at launch, the Grand Touring, which we purchased to test. It makes 828 horsepower from its dual motors, has a 123 kilowatt-hour battery, and 900-volt charging architecture, as well as all-wheel drive. The manufacturer's suggested retail price was $94,900. We added the Dream Drive 2 Pro system for $6,750, plus more than $8,000 in other options. Add in the destination fee of $1,650, and the total cost for our vehicle is $111,450. And the Lucid's built in America. Final assembly point is Casa Grande, Arizona. A less expensive touring trim is supposed to be available, but it wasn't available for order at the time of our video. So styling of a vehicle doesn't have any impact on our ratings. No matter how attractive or ugly it is, no points are given. But the styling of the vehicle definitely has an impact on other parts of our ratings. For example, visibility, getting in and out, interior headroom, all of that can be impacted by styling. And certainly, besides looking like the Air sedan, it actually has a resemblance to the Hyundai Ioniq 9 because the way the roof slopes down in the back to this almost boat-like tail design. Everything is big. The wheels, the doors, the length. It's big, roomy inside, has a lot of really good packaging ideas. One thing, it's on its lowest air suspension setting. It's a little less like an SUV and more like a wagon. So getting into the Lucid is its own thing. The Lucid has both a key card as well as a key fob. And it's really great because the key fob will have it work as a proximity sensor. Of course, we've already had problems with the key fob being recognized. So we use the key card placed here, and we wait, and it wakes up. So one thing with the handles is that they're slow to open up. When you lift it, it's not as if there's a touchpad underneath. These you have to lift, but there's a delay in the action, and the handles feel really flimsy. Now, getting in, pretty easy to the front. The door opens almost 90 degrees, giving you a big square space to climb in. Now on the lowest setting, it's almost difficult to drop into the seat, particularly over the side bolsters. But if the Gravity is at the highest setting, it's easy to get in because the seat is almost the height of your hip and you just slide right in. So once you're inside, close the door and press on the brake and it activates the comfort setting and the car kind of wakes up. Tells you to tap the key on the console to drive if it doesn't recognize the key fob. So you reach under here, which is a little awkward because it's kind of hidden away underneath this armrest. Tap the key, you get an indication the car is ready to drive. So sitting inside the Gravity, what you're greeted with are screens and touch surfaces. Touch surfaces on the steering wheel. There's a whole touch collection over here. This section of the screen is touch sensitive. Touch screen here. You fortunately do have some toggle buttons here. The other feature, of course, that dominates the interior, the squircle or squoval steering wheel. Unfortunately, though, it's really awkward to drive with, particularly in slow speed situations, because you start getting into weird hand-over-hand motions that don't feel natural. If you do a lot of turning, it could be upside down, but it actually looks like it's right side up because it's almost symmetrical. But one of the really interesting things is a lot of sports cars, a lot of race car drivers would, put tape or something on the top of the steering wheel so that they knew in driving at a quick glance if the steering wheel was up or upside down. So you see that in a lot of cars as well today. It's like a nice little feature. Lucid has it at the bottom. Maybe it'd be better if the seam was at the top of the wheel, and that would be kind of conventional. It does have, in theory, a positive. It lowers the dash height because it doesn't have the big round top so that you could see the gauges, and it also doesn't block the forward view. So the seats are pretty comfortable. They have good bolsters on the side and the bottom cushion to keep the passenger in place during any kind of hard cornering. One of the things we really like is the fact that they have manual controls for the adjustments. But some drivers find you can't lower the front leading edge of the bottom cushion enough so that it's down, it pans down for comfort. As comfortable as these seats are, we borrowed a version of the Gravity from Lucid that had ventilated massage seats and also had an extendable cushion in the front for a little bit more under leg support. Those were really nice. All right, so storage now. So the storage on the doors is pretty good. It has a nice deep pocket. The glove box, on the other hand, is a little strange. You use one of those programmable buttons to open it up, and it opens really slowly. It has a very narrow slit to reach through, and it's very, very deep inside. Underneath the armrest, it's very, very big, very deep. You have a lot of space for stuff. That actually extends all the way forward because this rubbery cup holder, keypad, pen holder thing can slide all the way forward, giving you all this space. Problem is, this piece is really stiff. Secondly, it's so shallow that if you either close the top or if you have stuff in here and you slide it forward, it could get stuck underneath. So as slick as it is, it's not really a great design for keeping stuff in it because anything of any height might get caught. So as much as you have a couple physical controls, most of everything else, from the windshield wipers to the headlights to everything, is in the screens. And one of the big issues is that there's no haptic feedback. So it's one of these situations where if you were driving and you had haptic feedback, at least you could maybe reach over and know that you touched the button. Here, there's no feedback whatsoever, so you don't know if you hit it, and you actually are forced to look at it more, taking your eyes off the road. So the steering wheel pads have its own annoyance to us. So there's a center piece that's touch sensitive, which can be disabled, thankfully, and around it, the unlabeled parts are buttons, but the buttons aren't really very responsive. There's plenty of times using the left button to try to adjust the distance for the distance sensing cruise control, and you press the button and it doesn't pop up. And then you press the button again and again, and then finally it pops up and then it makes the adjustment. So when you're in the screens, it's another case of just, we can put everything into a screen, so why don't we? There are so many different layers of what you can do here. It is overwhelming. It takes a long time to go through and find what you want. Even the owner's manual doesn't have a search feature. Interestingly enough, it does have the Apple Watch app, but in ours, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto aren't available. Now in the press car we borrowed, it was activated. So you're stuck using all of the Lucid systems when in some cases, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto would be better. For example, I've taken a lot of phone calls in the car with my phone paired via Bluetooth. It shows up, it rings, I can hear it, but there's no audio connection. The big question that we've had is, for $111,000, is the interior appropriate? And it's a hard thing to say. For example, the leather feels really high quality, but there's other stuff that feels really kind of flimsy. The buttons don't feel particularly sturdy. The armrest and the door panel, they have this weird felt material inside the center armrest. It has this mouse fur-like flocking. So the interior looks nice, but then when you start getting into some of the touch surfaces, that's where you see that it feels like costs are being cut. The one last oddity of the interior, it's the door releases. Inside this grab handle, there's a slider. You have to pull back to open and unlatch the door. Every time you have a guest, you have to say, like, oh, wait, you gotta reach into the arm. Yep, no, that knob, you gotta pull it back. Yep, pull it back. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of explaining on how to get out of the car. And on that note, let's get out of the car and go to the back seat. So the rear doors open 90 degrees, if not like 95 degrees. It's a huge, almost square space, makes it very easy to get in. When it's in the higher setting, like the front, the seats are almost hip height, easy to slide in. There's good foot room underneath the front seats. There's decent support underneath your hamstrings, underneath your legs. Really abundant headroom. With the glass roof, it's an airy space, even with the dark interior. Super nice. Cool things such as USB-C port on the backs of the front seats, climate control system back here. The seats recline manually, and then they power slide fore and aft. Some of the negatives, however, if you listen to when the seats move, it sounds like something that you would hear on a factory floor. It's an awful, awful sound and definitely not worth $111,000. All right, so why don't we check out the third row? So to get into the third row, you use the power slide and tilt feature. And wait. Yep, kind of cool. It moves the driver's seat up. So the back seats slide. The front seats will move forward to allow them to get out of the way. It does create a decently sized space to climb through.
I don't know how to drop the head restraint down, like from inside.
So there's no rear seat controls or third row controls to move the second row seat. So you have to use the button on the side to power slide it back and then pull it. And it is kind of a heavy seat. It's gonna be hard for kids sometimes to pull that seat forward. Once it's in place, footroom is decent for an adult. Under leg support of the third row seat, it's not great, but it's not awful. You can recline the seat by pulling the strap over your shoulder. So, if there's no bags back there, you can find a somewhat comfortable spot as an adult. For kids, it's probably perfect. Getting out requires pressing the button on the side and waiting for it to go forward. It's just kind of weird not to have any kind of control back here that would push the seat forward and make it a little easier to get out. So one thing that a number of testers have noted that when getting out of the third row or even getting in, you step on a lot of these plastic pieces that feel really flimsy, but overall, getting out isn't too bad. So now why don't we look at the final part of the interior, the cargo space. So even with the third row up, there's a decent amount of storage space. That's because the seats go into a well covered by this panel. Lowering the seats, very much like a minivan, you get a very flat load floor. There is a lot of nooks and crannies for things to fall into, so keep the panel. Panel will slide right in here, fits in pretty well, and now it covers up all those little nooks and crannies I talked about. Another issue that we have is that the car is so low in this back with this boat tail-like styling that it's incredibly easy to hit your head. Reviewer after reviewer, tester after tester has written in the logbook about how they hit their head on this bar over here. Not the top of the tailgate, but just reaching in just to do the seats, they've just clocked their head like this. So if you want to use the full cargo floor and lower the second row seats flat, you have to use the power buttons for the second row that are on the side here. And they go through their very slow, very loud adjustments, but they fold down. And again, this big gap sits between the shelf where the third row seats latch down and then the folded second row seats. Anything that you have may fall in between these two seats and then roll underneath the second row. So you got to keep that in mind. But still, it's a decent opening and it's a very long cargo area. It's just also very low. So the second row does not power raise, so you have to do it manually, and the seat back is incredibly heavy. It really is something that takes a lot of effort for an adult, so a kid is just not going to be able to do that. Raising the seat back also shows that when the cushion slides forward, the bottom cushion, it exposes everything here, all these electrical connections. It just is a little strange looking. Raising the bottom cushion is much easier. There's a little bit of an assist. It's very light. It just slides right into place. So the final cargo option is the front trunk. There's no button on the outside to open the front trunk. You see, it is really big. And, you could have people sit there, it's a little hard, but maybe you could put a little pad there. There's little spots here for your drinks. It definitely can carry a lot of gear. Closing it, you just press the button on the side, gives you a little warning, and it drops. All right, so why don't we take it out on the track for some driving impressions. So the powertrain really is the best aspect of the Grav. It has 828 horsepower from 2 motors. So what you have is 3 drive modes. You have Smooth, Swift, and Sprint. Smooth is very quick. Swift feels even faster. Sprint is just incredibly quick. I mean, up to 80, 90, top and gonna hit 100 miles an hour, incredibly fast. The launch mode. So what you have to do with this is you press and hold the brake with your left foot. You press and hold the accelerator with your right foot. And up here you can see it says launch mode activated. And we're going to try it. So that's the first time I've done it. Super quick acceleration. I haven't felt that since maybe Porsche 918 Hybrid that we had borrowed at one point. Early Tesla Model S's, definitely very quick to the point where, it's almost tunnel vision when it first takes off. The brakes, pretty good as far as normal feel. bringing you down, scrubbing off speed from 100 miles an hour. You know, a decent pedal. There is a softness to it in the beginning, and it almost feels as if they need to be bled. The gravity is slowing, but the brake feel is softer than you would expect or want to really have. You can quickly and easily adjust the regen mode from the main screen on the lower console. So you can have off, where it just basically will coast. Standard mode, you can kind of drive with one pedal. If you put it onto the high mode for regen, that's pretty much true one pedal driving. So in general, the Gravity drives a little smaller than it is. I mean, this is a big 6,000 pound, 7-passenger vehicle. Steering weight and heft is pretty good. The steering ratio, you know, how much you turn the wheel, how it corresponds to the front wheels turning, is actually good as well. I mean, certainly the steering wheel is somewhat annoying with the weird size, particularly getting into a tight turn like this. The ride is well contained. There's not a lot of pitching, say, front to rear, so it's not as if it's bobbing forward and rolling back over bumps, but impacts do come through. I mean, going over, say, a manhole, going over a sewer grate, those really do punch through. There is a little bit of side-to-side lean, so you get some head toss when you go around tight bends and then go back the other direction. The body does have a little bit of motion to the side. So forward visibility is pretty good. The windshield pillars or the A-pillars are thick, but there's a nice little window in the corner. That helps because there's also a lot of space between the driver's side mirror and the passenger side mirror and the body. The hood is very low. It does drop off significantly with the low instrument panel. It gives you very good visibility, particularly if you like to sit up high. If you sit down low, slam to the floor, it is a challenge to see out. The big issues really do come from over-the-shoulder views. The B-pillar here, incredibly thick. If you have the third row seat up with the two head restraints raised, the visibility at the back is almost non-existent. The rear roof pillars are very, very thick as well. Side windows are massive. So over your right shoulder view is actually pretty good. There are lots of cameras, lots of sensors to help you. You know, the driver's instrument panel does show a video feed from the right or the left camera, depending on what directional you choose. The weird thing is that the video quality really seems poor. This looks like a very grainy video feed. The Gravity also has these sun visors that basically, because you have this massive glass panel that extends over the driver's head, so they're anchored to the windshield up here. They're kind of floating. They're very shallow. They're not very long or deep. They're wide. They don't necessarily block a ton of sun. It may give an airy feel, but they do have lights on the vanity mirror here. So the solution for that is that there is a panel that holds a number of batteries. You're gonna have to replace these if the lights begin to go out. They do the job, they're not great. So with all the cameras and sensors on the Lucid Gravity, there is the front parking sensors as well with a camera. So as you approach something, it overlays it with how many inches away you are. So you can fine tune your parking without having to look up over the hood or just hope that you're gonna park by touch or feel. So on the plus side, the Dream Drive system has a driver monitoring system behind the steering wheel, and it watches the driver. It's great to have that. We advocate for having a driver monitor. The one thing is that the Lucid one is extremely hyperactive. It operates at all times. You can turn it off, but if you have the driver monitor on, it operates even when you're not using any of the assisted driving features. If you go into a turn and you look to where you are going, this system will think that you're distracted and it'll start sending up alerts. Right there, you could hear it. It's a little hyperactive, particularly since, again, I don't have any of the systems engaged to do assisted driving. So our testers found that most of the other driving assistance systems work really well. One of the pretty cool things it does, and it's only really on the highway, is that if you're in a lane on the left side, the right side is a tractor trailer truck, it will slightly move the Gravity over to the left side of the lane just to give a little bit of a buffer next to the semi in the right lane, which is kind of cool. What we did find is that in some fast or big, wide turns on the highway, it does tend to drift to one side or the other of the lane. That's a little unnerving, that it moves around so much in a lane. So when you have the lane departure warning and lane keeping assistance systems activated, the car will give you alerts. It'll give you a display showing that you're leaving the lane, but you'll also feel the steering wheel vibrate. When you have the cruise control activated, and you're driving, it will have an aggressive counter steer jerking motion, pulling you back in the lane if it senses that you're going too far, you're too close to going over the line. And when you turn off the adaptive cruise control, immediately it feels as if the car threw out an anchor. All of a sudden, the gravity will really significantly slow down, and that could shock someone from behind. And the Gravity comes standard with all the key safety features that Consumer Reports looks for in a vehicle, such as forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, automatic emergency braking that operates on highway speeds, blind spot warning, and rear cross traffic warning. So overall, the Lucid Gravity is certainly a technological tour de force. It has a native NACS port, so you can use Tesla superchargers. It has incredible power. It's very roomy. It's nicely finished inside. It rides well. It handles well, particularly for a 6,000 plus pound vehicle. The problem is that it's a perfect poster child for why Consumer Reports says, don't buy a first-year vehicle. It has so many software flaws and has a lot of fit and finish issues that you discover when you start looking closer at it. We would not tell anybody to run out and buy a vehicle like this, any first-year vehicle, but particularly something so technologically advanced as the Gravity in its first model year. The issues here that we're seeing are so deep that it really may take a couple years for Lucid to get it worked out. If you want to read the full road test on the Lucid Gravity or any other electric vehicle, go to consumerreports.org.